Hello, my name is Tanya Aitamurta. I'm a postdoctoral scholar at Stanford University, and I will talk about crowdsourced policymaking today. And I will focus on definition, value, and challenges of crowdsourced policymaking. And thank you so much for inviting me to give this talk. I'm really excited about this opportunity to share some of my work with you. And let's start with the definition of crowdsourcing. Crowdsourcing is a mechanism for knowledge search. It's an open call online for the crowd to perform a task. And the locus of power is always within the crowdsourcer. So this means that if it's a national government or a local government who invites the crowd to participate in a policymaking process, they crowdsource people's feedback, ideas, and knowledge for this policy. So it is then the government who decides about what's being crowdsourced, when and how the input is being used. The crowdsourcer can be also a nonprofit organization who asks the crowd, for instance, the residents of a certain geographic area or all the citizens of a country to contribute a policy online. And crowdsourcing can be implemented in many different parts of the policy cycle. The crowd can be part of the data gathering and defining problem, these stages that are very early on when the policy is just being defined and determined. The crowd can be asked to propose options to solve problems in the policy. The crowd is less often part of the actual drafting part of the policy or decision making or implementation. So these parts, the drafting, decision making, and implementation, they still remain the responsibility of the civil servants and urban planners in the government, and also the elected representatives in city councils and parliaments and so on. Now, let's look at a couple of examples about crowdsourced policymaking in practice. And first, let's travel to Finland, which is actually my home country. It's a small country in Northern Europe. And I've worked with the national government of Finland, and we crowdsourced off-road traffic law reform a couple of years ago. And Finland is a northern country, so we have snow most of the year round, especially in northern Finland, and people move around in snowmobiles in the winter. And there's a law that governs off-road traffic, including snowmobile riding. It's called Off-Road Traffic Act. And there had been a debate about the law and how it should be reformed because it's getting too old, it should be revised. And our minister of the time, the Minister of the Environment, Mr. Ville Niinistö, said that, okay, let's reform the law, but let's reform it a new way. Let's involve the crowd in the lawmaking process. And that's how this project got started. So there was a website where people could get more information about the law and the pressure to reform it. And also people were asked to submit their ideas how to improve the law. This law has two goals. It should protect the safety of the snowmobile riders, and also it should protect nature from the harm of off-road traffic. And now people were asked to submit their ideas online for about 10 categories like safety, protecting the nature, and so on. And the idea was to gather as many ideas, as much knowledge from as large crowd as possible. And these ideas would pop up on the online platform. Other people could comment on those and vote on these ideas and propose more ideas if they so wanted. In another process here in the US, I'm working with the city of Palo Alto. We are crowdsourcing people's feedback to their comprehensive city plan. So comprehensive city plan is a plan, it's like a master plan for the city for the next 15 years. So it's like an urban planning strategy that will define in the big picture the city's strategy for different elements, including transportation. So now the city of Palo Alto has asked the residents of Palo Alto how, for instance, transportation could be improved in the city. And now people have been able to invited to send in their ideas online, and then in a later part of the process, the city shared a policy draft. People were invited to annotate the draft, and so on. Here's Hilary Gittelman. She's an urban planner in the city of Palo Alto, and she's one of the spearheads of this very exciting crowdsourcing process here in Palo Alto. And what's really interesting about the Palo Alto process is that there's like two layers of civic participation. There's the online crowd, anybody can participate online by sending in their ideas and comments. And then there's the CAC, the Citizens Advisory Committee that the city has set up to process the crowd's input and also propose their own ideas. The city has chosen this CAC, like the members had to apply for the to be part of the CAC, and the city then chose the ones who participated. And then all this civic input is then channeled to the policy. And what's common to these crowdsourced policymaking processes is that typically there are many different stages, as was the case in the Finnish case and also in the Palo Alto case, that the crowd is first invited to participate in a certain part of the policy cycle. Then the legal drafters, the urban planners, they take the crowd's input, they analyze and synthesize it, they channel the crowd's input to the policy, they publish the policy draft, and then the crowdsourcing starts again. And again, the civil servants, their legal planners, legal drafters, they take the civic input and then they analyze and synthesize it. And so the process goes on. And if you take a step back and think about how does crowdsourcing fit into our traditional model of representative democracy. So here's a typical lawmaking process, how laws are being drafted in Finland. So it's the civil servants in the Finnish government who are hired bureaucrats. They are not elected representatives. But so they are the legal drafters. So they draft the bills. And they work with interest groups and expert committees. And then when the bill is ready, it goes to the parliament, which in Finland consists of elected representatives. And they decide over whether the bill will be approved or not. And the same case in the Palo Alto case, that it would be the city council, the elected representatives, who decide about the comprehensive city plan. And now, when we invite the crowd as a part of this process, we see that the crowd brings in an additional data point to the civil servants, to the legal drafters, who then write the bill, or in the Palo Alto case, it's the urban planners in the city who listen to the crowd and they get that information. But the decision-making power still remains with the elected representatives. So it's very, very important to know what crowdsourcing is and what it's not. It is not a decision-making tool for direct democracy because the crowd is not deciding over the policy. It provides an additional data point. Also, crowdsourcing is not a public opinion poll. Crowdsourcing is used in an early stage of a policymaking process where we are developing options and looking for solutions and mapping the problem space. Whereas we use opinion polling when we have defined set of options. Let's say, should the city of Palo Alto increase the amount of public shuttles or not? And then we could do opinion polling about it. And then we would do random sampling of residents of Palo Alto, and that's how we get representative sample of people. But if we use crowdsourcing, we always have participation bias because it's people who self-select to participate. They already are interested in the topic, or they have knowledge about it, and that's how they decide to participate. So we have to keep these methods separate and understand that there is a use for crowdsourcing. It can be really good in an early stage of policymaking, and then you can do public opinion poll by using traditional opinion polling methods when you have defined set of options. Okay, so now we have established what crowdsourced policymaking is. So now let's talk about value in crowdsourced policymaking. Why should we, or why would we do crowdsourcing in policymaking? So we have defined three aspects in value creation in crowdsourced policymaking, and those are democratic value, epistemic, which means knowledge producing value, and economic value. And democratic value accrues in four different aspects: transparency, accountability, deliberation, and empowerment. And if you think about transparency first, so in a crowdsourced policymaking process, there's two types of transparency. There's horizontal transparency. There's the transparency between the crowd members. They can see what others are saying, they can comment on each other's ideas and so on. They can interact. And then there's the vertical transparency, which is the transparency from the crowd to the government, from government to the crowd. This means that the crowd, the residents and the citizens can see not the government's actions, they can see that this policy is now being reformed. People are invited to participate in this reform, and people can have a say over it. And this transparency can increase accountability because now the crowd can demand justifications from the government. They can ask why, if there's something that happens, like the policy is not reformed or it's reformed in a totally different way than what the public discussion was about. So the crowd can go back to the government and ask, what's the deal, why was this reform going to this direction, and so on. The third aspect in democratic value in crowdsourced policymaking is deliberation. So when the crowd participates online and there's horizontal transparency and they can see each other's comments and interact with each other's, they start deliberating. And that creates peer learning, learning among the citizens, the participants, and also learning from experts. Because in the cases where the civil servants or other experts are present on the platform and answering people's questions and also encouraging participation. So then the crowd has a possibility to interact and learn from the experts. And one might suspect that the quality of deliberation in crowdsourcing must be really low because it's the anonymous online crowd typically who comments there. So it must be, go towards the kind of online trolling situation. But based on our research findings, that's not the case actually. That deliberation in crowdsourced policymaking can be almost as good quality as offline deliberation, which can be quite surprising. And then the fourth aspect in democratic value is empowerment of citizens. So our research findings show that when people participate in crowdsourced policymaking, they feel empowerment. For instance, people who we have interviewed for our studies who have participated in crowdsourced policymaking, they say that, I'm reading part of one of these interviews, this is actually the first time in my lifetime when I feel that I'm really participating in making democracy and influencing decision making in this society. It feels much more real than just voting for some person. So as this quote shows, this feeling of participation, it creates a feeling of empowerment that can be pretty strong, considering that people just submit their comment or idea on an online platform. And this leads us to the actual users, the participants, our citizens who we invite to participate on these online platforms. Let's meet here Jaska. He was one of the most active participants in the crowdsourced off-road traffic law reform in Finland. And he lives in a pretty remote area in just by the Arctic Circle in Finland, so it's pretty high up in north. It's like Alaska of the United States. And there we have snow. We have Jaska happens to have some reindeer, so he uses his snowmobiles a lot in his work when he's herding his reindeer, and also when he runs his daily errands, goes to post office and so. So he had many opinions and ideas about the law because it really affects his everyday life. And he found that when he participated to policymaking process through crowdsourcing, was that it was really empowering for him. This is what he and others like him said. The only way to make a difference from out here in the country is really online. All other activity means you have to drive around in your car all evening to get somewhere. It's pretty impossible. So we deal with an area here, geographic area, that has very long distances, just like in Alaska, and there's like people scattered all over the country, and the distances are really long. So with the crowdsourcing, Jaska and other participants, they got access to policymaking process and they became physically and mentally closer to this process. And the second aspect of value creation in policymaking is epistemic. That means knowledge producing value. So when we use crowdsourcing, there is knowledge that's being produced by the crowd. People share knowledge with each other. Experts share knowledge there. And the knowledge can be two types. It can be experience-based knowledge, like situated knowledge based on people's everyday experiences. It can be also expertise-based knowledge because there's also experts participating in the policymaking process. And when we use crowdsourcing, we extend the knowledge search from the typical knowledge neighborhood that we use in policymaking, which is the legal drafters and urban planners and politicians. And we extend this search to the crowd's knowledge neighborhoods. And that's how we can harness people's collective intelligence to a policymaking process. This means that we take the diversity and a large crowd and we channel these virtues of collective intelligence to policymaking. The third value aspect is economic value. So when we use crowdsourcing, we can access citizens' needs and knowledge in a fast and efficient manner. And that's how we can harness crowd capital. And that can lead into a more efficient service delivery because now the government, assuming that the government is doing crowdsourcing, could be also a non-profit organization, the crowdsourcers can detect people's needs in a more efficient way, and that's how they can also design services in a more efficient way. And also on the other side, we can assume that the crowd would have a stronger commitment to these decisions and policies when they have been part of these processes, just like the IKEA effect. When you buy your furniture from IKEA and you have to assemble them yourself, which can be painful, just like policymaking can be painful. But when you are part of the process, you feel more committed, more attached to your furniture, just like to this policy. And if you think about this value creation aspect of economic value, and we think about the history of crowdsourcing. So crowdsourcing has been used a long time to crowdsource solutions for companies' R&D challenges. Like companies like Procter and Gamble use this type of innovation intermediaries like Innocentive, where they post their problems, the R&D problems, to the online crowd, so anybody can go and start solving the problem, and then the solvers get a reward, which in these cases are typically monetary rewards. So if this can be an efficient method to solve R&D challenges, so why crowdsourcing couldn't be an efficient method for finding good solutions for policies? But of course, then we have multiple challenges when we use crowdsourcing in policymaking. One of the biggest challenges is something that I call the civic data overload. That means the analysis and synthesis process, where the more participants you have, the more input you will have. And that means that you need to analyze and synthesize all this data that typically accrues on these spreadsheets. And so you need to have good methods and a good process design so that you don't end up to the situation that civil servants in the government or urban planners in the city government, they are drowning into this data. Because if we don't have good analysis methods, we create actually this bottleneck in participatory channel, meaning that people want to participate, but then if we can't open up this bottle, we can't actually use their input unless we really analyze and synthesize them in an efficient manner. Also, there are other challenges. The quality of quantity of participation. There's this ongoing question, what is the good quality? How do we measure quality in crowdsourced policymaking? How much should there be participation so that the process would have legitimacy? But I feel like, and based on the experiences that I have working on multiple crowdsourced policymaking processes in different countries, most of these challenges are design and innovation management challenges. These are not challenges that can't be overcome. For instance, for analysis and synthesis, you just need to plan ahead. You have to design the process so that you can also already when you are gathering people's feedback, you are at the same time categorizing, or the platform automatically categorizes the input so that you don't need to start from scratch when you start analyzing the input. Of course, one challenge is the digital divide. Like, we have to remember, whenever we use any online civic engagement practices, whatever it is, whether it's participatory budgeting or crowdsourcing, is that there's a digital divide. Not everybody has access to online tools, but also I feel like there's awareness divide. Like, not everybody is aware of these processes because these are so new. So it's our responsibility as organizers of crowdsourced policymaking processes to inform people in as holistic manner as possible so that they know that there's this possibility to participate. So thank you so much. This is just a brief overview about crowdsourcing in policymaking. If you're interested in knowing more, you can go to our website, thefinishexperiment.com. We have a ton of publications there, not only about the Finnish case, but also about these other examples in the US and so on. And finally, thank you for listening, and also thank you for all the Finnish people and Americans, the so-called crowd who has participated in this crowdsourced policymaking processes. And also thank you to my many co-authors and mentors and advisors. Thank you so much. Happy to take any questions now, or you can just shoot me an email anytime. Thank you.